चलिए, जैसे कि इंटरनल सिक्योरिटी का आज जो होगा हमारा आखिरी सेशन होगा। मल्टीपल स्टेट्स अभी तक कवर किए गए, मल्टीपल रीजंस थे उनके रिगार्डिंग क्यों इंसर्जेंसीज पैदा हुई, रिगार्डिंग लैंड एलिनेशन, एथनिक प्रॉब्लम्स थी, सेपरेट स्टेट्स की मेंटालिटी थी और सेपरेट कंट्री बनाने के सब तो था। आंध्र प्रदेश के बारे में बात हुई, नक्सलाइट के बारे में, छत्तीसगढ़ के बारे में, मणिपुर के बारे में, नॉर्थ ईस्ट स्टेट्स के बारे में। आज जो है लास्ट रहेगा ओवरव्यू करके, फिर उसके बाद इसको खत्म करता हूँ। ठीक है, इसी बीच आपको 5 से 6 क्वेश्चंस मिले हैं जो आपको प्रैक्टिस करने हैं। लास्ट के सेशन में आपको कुछ टास्क दिया गया था, वो टास्क कंप्लीट करना है। स्टोरीज तो दिमाग में रहेंगी, बस खाली ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल नेम्स याद रखने ताकि चीजें क्लियर रहे। ठीक है, चलिए फिर कंक्लूड करते हैं। तो इंडिया ने सिंस इट्स इंडिपेंडेंस मिराड ऑफ internal securities faced the while the number of threat has been persisted since then, country has been successfully in tackling of some of them. तो प्रॉब्लम तो आई है लेकिन सक्सेसफुली टैकल किया गया है। अच्छा, सक्सेसफुल टैकल का मतलब क्या है? ब्रिंगिंग पीस बैक। तो पीस तो बैक आई ही है कितने स्टेट्स में, वो कोई इशू नहीं है। One of the first challenge of India was that communist inspired and communist led insurrection था जो पहला था। अच्छा, क्योंकि उस समय इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस भी मैटर करते थे, चाहे वो चाइना के साथ हो, चाहे वो रशिया के साथ हो, जहां पे कम्युनिज्म की आइडियोलॉजी, पॉलिटिकल आइडियोलॉजी भी बनी, तो वो चीजें मैटर करती हैं। The communists, in order to seize the political power from the democratically elected government, tapped into the grievances of the poor peasants, tribesmen, incited them and organized them to fight for their rights. ठीक है। In the initial year, the communist rebellions were localized, challenged the local government, but later on, some of these rebellions fused together to become a pan-India phenomena. In some cases, these communist rebellions sowed the seed for the future ethnic insurgencies in the countries as well. Given the wide spectrum of these threats, tackling them necessitates a whole government approach. Both the union and state government requires to effective policy change, intervention at the pan-India as well as the state level to address the issue of political disempowerment. The economic deprivation, cultural discrimination, neglect, disenchantment with more often than not provided fodder for insurgencies and sexism. देखिए क्या लिखा है, क्या क्या रीजंस होते हैं? deprivation, feeling of appreciation हो जाए ना। there is two kind of deprivation, absolute deprivation जो कि बहुत ही रेयर फिनोमिना है, and relative deprivation जो कि एक फिनोमिना है। Most of the time a person feel relative deprivated. अब जैसे कि सिंपल सा एक क्वेश्चन ले लीजिए, अभी हमारे जो प्राइम मिनिस्टर है मिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी, उनके होम मिनिस्टर है अमित शाह। सो प्राइम मिनिस्टर की पावर जो होती है वो होम मिनिस्टर की पावर से ज्यादा है। नरेंद्र मोदी की फैन फॉलोइंग एंड एवरीथिंग अमित शाह से ज्यादा है। So regarding social prestige, Amit Shah can also feel socially deprived. Now, this is a relative deprivation. ये absolute deprivation नहीं है, ये relative deprivation है। Cultural discrimination, जैसे कि कुछ हम लोगों क्या तो कास्ट ही ऐसे, जैसे कि उनको कास्ट की जो है वो ऐसा बनाया गया जो कि कल्चरल डिस्क्रिमिनेशन को जस्टिफाई करता है, जैसे कि भूमियार, हरिजन एंड ऑल। अब ये डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हो गया, ठीक है। निग्लेक्ट, डिसइंचैंटमेंट, तो ये सारे कुछ है जो चारा प्रोवाइड करते हैं इंसर्जेंसी को और फिर उसका गाय खा खा के या सांड खा खा के चारा वो मजबूत बनता है। कौन सी गाय कौन सी चार? इंसर्जेंसी और सक्सेसिज्म। At the same time, maintaining public order and rule of law by strengthening state police forces, judicial system assures common people for getting fair justice. In the initial decades, Union government tried to confront insurgencies and militancy proactively by dismissing the state government and deploying the armed forces to fight with the insurgents and the militias. It was successful in the efforts in the cases such as West Bengal and Mizoram. However, later, yes, the Union government transitioned into the role of providing guidance as well as financial, logistical, legal, diplomatic support to the affected state government, issuing guidelines about the tackling Maoist insurgency, providing financial and logistical assistance to the affected state, refraining from imposing precedent rule and deploying Indian army are the example of supportive role played by the Union government. This transition has likely brought up the growing realization of New Delhi that most of the internal security threats originate at local and state level. More often than not, it is the disgruntled political elites who exploit the genuine perceived grievances of the people to grab the power by fomenting disaffections and unrest. Therefore, if the issue is political, cultural, and economic neglect are taken care of at the local levels, much of the conflict could be resolved before they could transform into the bigger problem and engulf the wider areas. There is also a realization that the solution to these internal securities problem lies in the political accommodation, positive social engineering, economic development, better governance at lower level, and by imposing fragile peace through security forces. Now, the discussion in the previous chapters have highlighted that the states have provided political inclusion, economic development, cultural expression to the politically and economically marginalized cultural minorities have been successful to a large extent in assuaging the politico-economic and cultural aspirants of the aggrieved populace and therefore were being weaned to the rebel away from the path of insurgencies and militants. For example, landlessness amongst the peasantries and tribals, exploitation by the landlord were genuine grievances which were exploited by the communists to rally the people and initiate the violent movements and to overthrow the democratically elected governments. Such states like West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Tripura had bear the burdens of communist rebellion. Had to bear the burden of communist rebellion. Therefore, enactment of Land Reform Acts. It was only when the Land Reform Act was successfully implemented and the tenancy rights given to the peasants that the main cause for the communist insurgency was addressed in West Bengal, Tripura to the larger extent in Andhra Pradesh. Here it is important to note that if the reforms and governance remains non-exclusive, then the cause of disaffections are reignited and leading to the conflicts. This happened in Andhra Pradesh in 1980s, West Bengal in 2000, when the left-wing extremism raised its head against in the tribal-dominated areas of the state. In both the cases, land reform were implemented in the plains areas where many intermediate and lower class caste people who hitherto formed the cadre based of communists benefited not only economically but was also accommodated politically. The political empowerment and economic growth motivated these beneficiaries to support the state government and withdraw from the communist cause. The tribal people, on the other hand, who also took active part in the communist rebellion, remained deprived of the land reform, political empowerment, and economic development. Their sense of neglect was exploited by the communists who formed the bases in the hilly and forested areas that attacked the central state government. Besides, the Maoist political elites of the state also contributed in fueling of the sense of deprivation amongst the tribal to gain the political power. They also hoped with the Maoist, especially during the election, to win the seats for their parties with the help of the rebels, but providing a political empowerment, ushering in the development in the tribal belts, as well as by providing them financial benefits, and state government was eventually able to assuage their hard feeling and win over them. The good example of political accommodation of the tribals by the state political elites is Tripura. The state government addressed the issue of political alienation by providing tribal with self-governance by establishing Tripura Autonomous Territorial Council. Autonomous Council covers two-thirds areas of the state The government also ensured that the tribal people, especially Jamatiyas, became economically self-sufficient by introducing forest agro-based economic activities as the mean of earning their livelihood. Similarly, in the West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh launched a special development package as well as provided effective governance to satisfy the development as well as the basic requirement of the tribal people. These efforts helped the state government in weaning away the youth from the Maoist fold, while effectively catering to the local socio-economic political aspiration of the people at the ground level was instrumental in addressing the root cause of the alienation, disempowerment, thereby eliminating the separatist tendency amongst the common people. Coercive actions by the state police also proved to be effective method to counter determined insurgents and militants. This fact holds true for almost all the states who have successfully defeated the insurgencies. However, Andhra Pradesh and the Punjab are the two states where the motivated and effective police force broke back of insurgencies and militancy also almost single-handedly. Andhra Pradesh defeated communist Naxal-Maoist insurgency predominantly through force central counter-insurgency strategy, a coercive counter-strategy of raising a special elite force called as Greyhound, backed by the effective and sophisticated intelligence to take the Maoist rebels hands-on, was responsible in eliminating the Maoist insurgency in the state. This strategy resulted in either killing or the arrest of the numbers of top Maoist leaders, forcing rest of the leaders to flee the state and take the shelter in the neighboring state. Similarly, in Punjab, dynamic leadership helped in infusing a sense of motivation, courage, and professionalism in hitherto corrupt partisan police force, non-interference by political leaders, and no tolerance towards the terrorism policy allowed the people to independently strategize and accomplish its tasks, eliminating the militancy of the state. The police was ably supported by the other security forces, Union Government, Indian Army, CRPF, NSG, BSF. In fact, effective police action was responsible in ending the urban extremism in West Bengal during 70s, like Punjab Police. West Bengal Police also became partisan and demoralized, which allowed the Naxalite to unleash a reign of terror in Kolkata and other urban centers of the state. The imposition of precedent rule and subsequent changes of the government in the state ensured that the political non-interference is working of police force. While the above-mentioned states have been successfully in efforts to eliminate the cause of the conflict, build peace, there are other states which continue to grapple with the problem of insurgencies because of the same strategies employed by them to alleviate grievances and bring prosperity and security to that their people are half-hearted. Like example, Chhattisgarh, Manipur, which continues to witness the high level of violence, indicates that the state government efforts to combat insurgencies have not yielded the desired result. A study of two states revealed that the fact such as location, terrains of the state, inter-ethnic conflict, and the lack of political will, political accommodation, ineffective governance, lack of coordination amongst the security forces, etc., plays spoil sports and hinder the process of conflict resolution and peace building. In case of Chhattisgarh, the heavily forest and hilly terrains of Dandakaran and its location at tri-junction of Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Telangana, previously undivided Andhra Pradesh, provided an ideal base area for Maoist. The remote and inaccessible location prevent the police forces to enter into the areas, thus allowing the Maoists to operate unmolested. In addition, the tri-junction ensured that the rebels could easily slip into the neighborhood states, as Chhattisgarh police did not have their jurisdiction beyond the state borders. The problem is further compounded by the fact that the coordination between the police forces in the three states is either non-existent or are poor, causing conducting counter-insurgency operation nearly impossible. A similar situation can be seen for the Manipur as well. Being proximate to the international border with a politically unstable complicit neighbor have ensured that the insurgent could easily cross the border and take the shelter in the neighboring country. The forested and hilly tracts of the state can make counter-insurgency operation difficult. The terrain, location, no doubt to the difficulties of the police in these states, but the fact that the police in these two states are also weak, partition does not help matter. In Chhattisgarh, the police is ill-trained and ill-equipped, which does not allow to have a courage to fight with the Maoists. The state relies heavily on the union forces to take on the Maoists. In fact, that the state of the police, that CRPF, have become a prominent force to fight the determined Maoist rebels in the state. In Manipur, the police is divided on ethnic lines and its personnel are biased towards their own community. Political interference is also rampant. The ongoing Meeti-Kuki conflict has brought the fact to the fore and questioned the effectiveness of the police to ensure the order and peace. Absence and lack of the political accommodation empowerment to the Chhattisgarh and Manipur have prevented the political solution, prolonged insurgencies in the state. In Chhattisgarh, poor performance of the tribal advisory committee and ineffective implementation of PESA Panchayati Raj Extension Act to the Scheduled Areas Act have robbed the tribals of the chance of self-governance and control over their resources. The tribal people have been vulnerable to land grab by mining and other private companies, as well as exploitation by the revenue and forestry officers. On the top of it, for the long time, Chhattisgarh government has not been able to provide a basic and effective administration to the highest affected districts. In fact, tribal population of Chhattisgarh are more politically deprived and socio-economically marginalized sections in the state. Given such a scenario, it is obvious that the tribal people feel neglected by the government and gravitate towards the Maoists who have been able to provide them some semblance of administration and justice. In Manipur, Methi communities dominated by state government have been biased against the tribal people residing in the hill areas of the state. In fact, successive state governments have deliberately neglected the development of the hill areas. They have been also reluctant to give more autonomy to the tribal peoples of the state and to manage its own affairs. The lack of the political accommodation and economic development have alienated the tribal people against the Metis and exacerbated the security situation. The recent conflict between the Metis and the Kukis communities is as an example of extreme charge that has been developed between the communities in the state. Furthermore, the refusal of the major Metis rebel group to give up their separatist demand and enter into the political dialogue with the government and the state government apparent lack of interest to arrive any political settlement in the rebel continues to make the state one of the most violent in the northeast. Given the most conflict start at the local level, if not addressed promptly, they will grow to a national concern. It can be concluded that in those states where the state political leadership have shown a resolve to combat insurgencies and political violence, peace have prevailed and sustained. In these states, the leadership have tried to defeat the ideology of the insurgents, win over the people with the judicious mix of course and political accommodation, justice and development. The effective implementation of the measures such as granting land titles, allowing local self-governance, reservation of the deprived sections in the politics as well as the government jobs, carrying out economic development, providing basic amenities were instrumental in bringing the political, social, economical empowerment to the marginalized sections of the society, thus robbing the insurgents the cause of mobilizing the people against the government at the same time strengthening the law enforcement and the intelligence agency and forging the better coordinations amongst the various security forces, ensuring insurgents, militants could be contained effectively. States where political will to fight insurgencies is lacking or absent have endured persistence, conflict, and violence. The failure of political leadership to bring together disparate ethnic groups together and find a political solution is primarily factor and persistence of insurgency. The state also fare bad with regard to the governments and economic development. Consequently, the residents do not enjoy a better quality of living and most remain dissatisfied, providing ample opportunities for the insurgent to exploit people grievances and strengthen their ranks and file. The need of the hour, therefore, is the leadership in the conflict affected state to display their will of effectively and urgently addressing the cause of the conflict and with sustainable peace. Here, there is important to highlight that the given multiplicity of the faith, ethnicities, and the other features in the country, the union and state government have been ever vigilant. Least issue of deprivation and disempowerment are not exploited by the disgruntled political elites to mobilize the people, agitate to capture the power, thus jeopardizing the internal security of the country. In fact, such instances has been already witnessed in the states such as Tripura and Punjab, where the insurgency and militants have been successfully contained. In Tripura, political parties such as Indigenous People Front of Tripura and Tripura Mohta, advocating a separate tribal state or a greater Tripura land, have been quite prominent in the recent time. The rise of these parties indicate that the tribal people remain dissatisfied in the demand for greater political power. In fact, Tripura Mohta has intensified its agitation for separate state. Further, the issue of Tripura land has caused tension between IPFT and its ally BJP in the state. If the separatist demands are not nipped at the bud, Tripura might see resurgence of the violence again. And similarly, in Punjab, SAT, the political party periodically pandering to the sentiment of extremism. The SAT government in 2012 allowed the memorial of Bhindranwale to come up into the Golden Temple. More recently, 22, the party president referred to Bhindranwale as a saint, eulogized his sacrifice for Sikh given the organization of such SFJ do not miss any opportunity to foment religious intolerance and separatist sentiment in the state. It is incumbent on the political parties to promote peace and harmony in the society, not contrive false grievances. Maintaining internal security is an ongoing process that requires vigilance, commitment, political will both at the union as well as the state level. It is, however, that the state that can address the issue of political disaffection and the governance at the ground level, prevent flaring up the local conflicts into the larger internal security threats. The need of the hour, therefore, is the state political leaders to refrain from fomenting ethnic, religious, caste, and sub-religious sentiment among the masses and garner political brownie point over others, as these should have a serious security repercussions. The state government should strive to provide inclusion and effective governance as well as employment opportunities so that all the segments of the societies are equally benefited. The state government should strengthen the police forces and implement police reform in the letter in a spirit to make the force professional and efficient. This will go a long way in curbing the criminal and anti-national activities at the ground level. Last but not the least, the state government should cooperate in tandem with the union government to ensure the national security. Now, these points are the ending point in answer right. What should be done? Okay. So with this, we'll be wrapping up this complete book got completed. Therefore, from tomorrow, we are going to see India's international relation Kautilya style. This will be the theme of upcoming sessions. So if you like this particular part series, kindly do let us know so that we can create more productive sessions for you people.